All right, welcome everybody. Financial Foundations, first day of term 5. The first thing we want to start talking about here is some of these macroeconomic topics. The very first one is going to involve a definition of economics. What if you were to look at the subject of economics, or the that knowledge area of economics? Anybody have a suggestion on how to define it? That's okay. It's not an easy thing necessarily to come up with. You think it's about money? What if I told you that economics was all about choices? Did you? Okay, all right. Somebody said they here in class, James said that he's heard that before. Oh, good. I got a thumbs up too. Nice.
I can take a guess. Like macro means like the big choices, like big choices out there. Like that young
Macro is big picture. Right. Yep. Right. Micro, we're not even really going to talk about that too much until we get into the second half of this term. Microeconomics is much more individualized. Macroeconomics is kind of how the world works. And if you think about governments, resources. I know everybody has heard about supply and demand. You know, how's all that work? That's our starting point here. So what I want to do to begin with is look at a sort of a definition that we will use, generally speaking, and then sort of break it down section by section. So I'm going to pause here for a second. All right, thanks for your patience, everybody. Little slideshow here just about economics. The definition that we will be working with is this one: a social science concerned with the way society chooses to employ its limited resources, which have alternative uses to produce goods and services for present and future consumption. Brighter? I know the projector in here is not very, does not do. Yeah, I don't know how to make it any brighter though. And this is a slideshow that's in your materials also. So if you go in here under define economics, you'll see this PowerPoint. You can pull this up at home and look at it, or on from any computer when you're in your Google Classroom account. However you will remember it best. The other handout that is in this section here is this, a definition of economics. Yeah, if that's, I mean, that's there to help. If some people I know have trouble structuring notes, so this is a kind of a note sheet that if you wanted to use it, you can. If you got a different way that you want to keep track of this stuff on your own, that's perfectly fine. Now, the only things that I'm going to be looking to have handed in are the things that are identified as assignments. Everything else is for reference, or we're going to talk about it in class, or it's material there that you might have to read on your own. One of the things that's kind of underlying a lot of this class are several assignments related to the Great Depression. We won't be talking a lot about the Great Depression but it's an important period in American history with a lot of parallels to things that have happened in the US economy and in the world economy over the last 20 years. You know, thankfully, things haven't gotten as bad as they were back then, but government has changed a lot since then too, and how government responds to economic issues has changed a lot. I mean, right now, you got the pandemic and stimulus checks being sent out to a lot of people who've been struggling because of loss of work and you know, can't go out. You're restricted from doing all kinds of stuff. So, you know, they say history repeats itself, and so hopefully part of what we're going to be seeing in some of these situations are ways that we can learn from history, and maybe your generation will do a better job of not repeating the mistakes of the past. I would hope at least that would be the case. So if we start breaking this definition down, the first segment involves a social science. Anybody have any idea what that might be referring to? People and science. Very good. James, you're on the money today, so to speak. Social, you know, they say humans are social beings, right? We live in a society. It all comes from the same root word. Think about Twitter and Facebook, all that stuff. It's social media. It's a way for people to interact. Well, the tricky part about economics is when they say it's a social science, if you're going to be a scientist, you're going to follow, I'm sure you guys have all heard the phrase the scientific method at some point in your schooling. You know, what is a scientific method? You have a theory, you set up some experiments, you check some results, you look at the results compared to your theory to see if your theory was good, and then you repeat it. What's that? Yeah, a theory or hypothesis. Yeah, that's great if you're talking about chemistry or physics, stuff like that. People, you know, people that are economists are trying to study human behavior and their choices in a social setting. So they try to apply the scientific method, but there's a lot of gray area, a lot of stuff that you can't pin down in black and white. So it's a very tricky area. If you're going to be an economist, you're going to do some analysis, you're going to do some studies, you're going to look at a lot of data, and you're going to draw conclusions and come up with hypotheses or theories about things. But because we're talking about people, it can also be unpredictable. Things can happen that you couldn't have foreseen. I mean, who would have foreseen this pandemic, you know, 2 years ago? I don't think anybody would have. So they're trying to be scientific, and they're talking about studying the society that we live in. And those same people are concerned with the way society chooses. Okay, well, how are choices being made in society? The United States and most of the world is essentially a market economy where people are trying to make money, and so the decisions are basically most of the time being made on the basis of profit. Who can make money from whatever product that they have? Well, the government's involved in that to a certain extent, because you know, if you think about what's happened with the automotive industry in the last 50 years, they went from the big gas guzzling, you know, hot rods of the 50s and 60s to fuel efficient cars because people started getting concerned that we were going to run out of oil. Well, that wouldn't have happened without government involvement. That's capitalism, where it's all about the profit and making money. If you go to North Korea, that's a communist country. Russia to a lesser extent, USSR for sure, but China has adopted a lot of market principles in terms of production, but it's the government that's making the decisions. It's not companies, generally speaking. And the example I use a lot, and I'm not trying to pick on China, but it's a huge country with a lot of centralized control. The government is controlling most of the economic decisions. And so if they decided that they wanted to make a certain product at this factory, well, that's what the people that are working there, that's what they're going to do. The example I use all the time for how different things are over there and how much control the government has. During the Beijing Olympics a few years ago, the government shut down all the factories, I don't know, within a 100-mile radius or something like that of Beijing, because the air pollution was so bad. Before the Olympics occurred, they wanted to have time for the air to clear. They didn't want Beijing to be shown as this pocket of pollution because of industrial smokestacks and things like that. That could never happen in America. Let's say Atlanta's hosting the Olympics. You think the federal government's going to say you all have to shut down all your factories so the place looks good on television? Ford Motor Company going to shut down for the Olympics? So how a society chooses has a lot to do with the kind of structure of the government. You know, we're a democracy. We get to vote for the people that represent us. People in North Korea, they have a dictator. They have very little choice about what the government does. That's probably the most extreme example. Cuba used to be like that under Castro. So there's a lot that goes into how a society is structured and what that means economically. So social science, society is choosing how to employ its limited resources. Well, this is where my example of the auto industry comes in. We don't have unlimited oil, right? It's going to run out sooner or later. But left to their own devices, the car companies would have kept producing those big engine, heavy steel hogs like from the 50s and 60s. But they had to be forced through government regulation to be more fuel efficient. And now what's that led to? You got companies like Tesla. You got every car company's got some kind of hybrid model out there that's got electric motors in it, getting 50, 60, 70 miles a gallon. So a lot less concern these days about running out of oil because of alternate technologies that have stepped in. But that didn't happen because the companies decided it. That happened because of regulation, and the society made the choice, hey, we can't keep using the oil the way that we've been using it. And there's plenty of examples like that, limited resources, but that's probably the most pertinent. Anybody that drives has to deal with oil and gas at some level. And I like using oil as an example also because of this next part of the definition. It says resources that have alternative uses. Oil is used in untold number of products. The roads, the asphalt that goes into the roads has oil byproducts in it. Tire, rubber, it has oil byproducts. Even plastics are involved with, have some certain plastics have oil byproducts in it. So somebody's making the decision to create these products. Companies that in a capitalist society are making those decisions because they think they can make money selling them. But everybody's fighting for these resources in a sense. So if you're a company that's making tires and you can get your oil products for a lesser cost than somebody else, than your competitor, then you're going to come out ahead. But let's say you're making some other product and the amount of oil that's available shrinks. Well, you're either going to go out of business or you're going to have to come up with an alternative for that oil in your product. So it's not just oil that goes into making gas for our cars. It's in all kinds of other stuff. And that's the alternative uses part. You could probably come up with 100 other examples that sort of fit the same description. The next part, these things are producing, these alternative uses are producing goods and services. Yep, we're going to make stuff and we're going to sell it. We're going to provide a service for people. We're going to have a quick lube shop that can change your oil in 15 minutes in your car. Great. Lots of companies can do that sort of thing. In a capitalist society, the ones that do it better are the ones that are going to survive. It's just the sort of the natural order of things. The next part of this is it gets a little trickier. For present and future consumption. Okay. We need oil today and we need oil for the foreseeable future. If it's only being driven by profit, people get greedy, and you want to, what's sometimes referred to as the American dream. Anybody can become president, anybody can become CEO of a big corporation, anybody can become a millionaire. I'm not convinced that I believe all of that, but a lot of us are told that when we're growing up. Well, if all we're worried about is how much money we're going to make in the next month or the next 3 months, the next quarter, we're gonna maybe make decisions a little differently than if we got to think about what it means for our kids and for their kids and for their kids. What's good for all of the population in the long term might not be the same as what's good for me this economic quarter. So how those decisions are made, what goods and services are being produced for present and future consumption. I mean, oil is a perfect example. When it's consumed, it's gone. When you burn that gas in your car, it's gone. You need more, you need new oil to make new gas. You put it all back together. Social science concerned with the way society chooses to employ its limited resources, which have alternative uses to produce goods and services for present and future consumption. Anybody have comments or questions about that definition?
No, yet.
All right. Ruth. Hi there.
Hi, how are you? I'm back.
Good, thank you. I wasn't sure who that was that popped in there on me. That's great. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, I mentioned something about the American dream. I'm a Hoosier. I was born in Anderson, Indiana. My dad was a minister. My mom was a teacher. So we moved around a lot when I was growing up. We didn't have a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't come from money. So
Did you grow up
No, I only lived there for less than a year. By the time we moved to Indianapolis when I was 11, and that was the 6th city I had lived in. I had been in 7 schools. It was kind of like being a military brat. You know, you just bounce around, you go from school to school to school. So I got told, like everybody else, you know, you can be a Major League Baseball player. You can be whatever you want to be. You know, that's kind of the American dream that I grew up with. But that's not the same for everybody. A lot of people don't even believe in that. So I got a little video here that I'm going to show. It's about that topic. And then your first assignment is going to be to write a version of your own American dream. What does that mean for you? It's going to be different for everybody. You know, I used to think I want to retire by the time I'm 42. That would have been the year 2000. Well, obviously that didn't happen. You know, I wanted to play pro basketball when I was growing up. I wasn't thinking about much of anything else. I just wanted to play sports. Well, that didn't happen either. So, you know, everybody's got to have a plan B, so to speak. So let me pull that video up. Okay, so the video I've got here is from a CBS News report a few years ago. So it's a pretty, I mean, CBS News is a respectable news organization. And it's going to show some different things, talk to some different people about whether or not they still believe in the American dream.
The 50s and 60s were good years to some.
It's up to my volume.
Port Clinton's population, 6,000 or so. The local auto parts factory alone employed nearly 1,000. Even without much education, there were well-paid blue-collar jobs to be had. In 1959, when Robert Putnam graduated from Port Clinton High School, valedictorian in his class. Was there a sense that you were living the American dream?
That was a golden age for the American middle class.
For Putnam, now a professor at Harvard, opportunity for all is the American dream, which he says is in trouble. I mean, look at this, rust and chains. Yeah. Port Clinton, his own hometown, he sees as proof. This is what's left of the auto parts factory. All those jobs gone.
This is a Rust Belt case. So in the Rust Belt, of course, the manufacturing disappeared and that undermined the social fabric and the opportunity for kids. But you can find the same thing all over the country, even places that don't have Rust Belt stories. You can't have the American dream if there's not a good, solid economic base for the middle class.
A glance at incomes tells the story. Since 1979, a 200% rise for the top 1%ers. The gap with everybody else widening, especially for middle-income households earning between $42,000 and $82,000. In his recent book, published by CBS-owned Simon & Schuster, Robert Putnam argues that this widening income gap has led to a widening and dangerous opportunity gap based on social class. Children's futures dictated by their parents' affluence and education.
It's not just the American economy that's pulled apart, leaving out the middle. It's the American society that's pulled apart into rich families and poor families.
In the middle of Port Clinton, Adrienne Hines smiles down from a billboard advertising her services as a bankruptcy lawyer.
When I see clients who have so very little, how do they even contemplate the American dream?
Her husband, Scott, is a judge who settles workmen's compensation disputes.
Scary part is we realize a few bad choices we could have been now.
Which has shaped their definition of the American dream.
I think it really comes down to security. And for us, I think that's what the American dream is knowing that you are eliminating the worry factor from your life.
They live well, but not lavishly, on the outskirts of Port Clinton. Their 13-year-old twins, Zoe and Avery, take piano lessons.
So we want to hear how track is going.
They have family dinners together.
Today wasn't as bad as yesterday, but it was still like, it's trying. So.
When they talk, education is a common theme.
We've taken them to college campuses over spring break.
And they're 13.
Take them to the art museum. I mean, they've been to, Europe twice.
Do you feel that you're living the American dream?
I do.
But according to a recent New York Times poll, the number of Americans who still believe in the American dream is slipping. It was 72% in early 2009, at the worst of the financial crisis, 64% this past December, in spite of the improved economy.
My mom wasn't around too much as when I was little, so I was mostly in my dad's custody, but he was always running around, so I was raised by my grandmother.
Chris Lawson, from a not-so-nice part of Port Clinton, Ohio, did not grow up living anybody's version of the American dream.
My dad was a little nuts. He's locked up right now.
Oh, he's in jail?
Oh, yeah, he's in prison.
His childhood was chaotic, just graduating from high school, a slog.
I didn't have many friends in school because I was kind of outcast, you know.
During the summer months, he does landscape work, but would like a steadier job.
There you go, Fishy.
In his early 20s, Chris Lawson is not someone you'd expect to be a big believer in dreams. But he is.
And goofy.
Or has been ever since his 3-year-old daughter Camille was born. He shares custody with Camille's mother.
Since I've had her, it's not about me anymore. None of this is, you know. I just gotta make sure she's on the right path, and then I'm on the right path to getting her there.
Is she your American dream?
Oh yeah, definitely. You're my angel.
He just looks so happy.
I love her. She does. She makes me so happy.
The flip side of the news that faith in the American dream has slipped to 64% is that 64%, nearly 2/3 of Americans, still do believe in an idea that is often about much more than making money. For immigrants such as Hussein Tassawar, it can still be a beacon of hope.
Everybody, immigrant have a dream when he come in America about freedom, nice living.
A banker in Pakistan, Tassawar left because it was dangerous for anyone who opposed the party in power. He walked to Afghanistan at night to escape.
They are my grandchildren.
His family now lives in New Jersey. He drives a taxi. Tassawar, all his children and grandchildren, are proud American citizens. You think coming to America gave you the opportunity you were hoping for?
Yeah, if you are a hard worker, you can get everything here.
His youngest daughter, Saba, started college last week.
She will go to the university and she can get opportunity. If she is intelligent,
You don't think of it on a day-to-day basis that, wow, my father struggled so much and now he's here. You kind of just use what you have. When you think back, I think it's a very respectful and honorable thing.
And if you happen to run across Hussein Tassawar's taxi, take a look at the name of the company he works for. Yes, really.
Couple of very different perspectives being shown in that report. Is one of the reasons why I keep using this clip, and it's from a few years ago. Because they mention what I wrote down, 72% in 2009 still believed in the American dream. In So more recently, it's dropped a little bit, 64%. Everybody's going to have a different viewpoint on that. A couple of things that I want to bring out about that video. Does anybody first have any comments or observations from their perspective on what they just saw that they would be willing to share? I'm gonna put a term down here in the chat because I don't know if everybody would understand it. I said it. So I just added the term you mentioned in the video, the term rust belt. You guys familiar with that term at all? I don't even know if you caught that in the video, but at the time they were standing there by that locked automotive factory, the chains around the fence. He mentioned this is not just a Port Huron, huh?
Does it mean that it's like they rusted too much so they had to close or something like that?
It rusted too much, so they had to close. That's very close. That's very close. You got the basic idea of it, but why did they really close? It wasn't because of rust. Think about Anderson. Think about Kokomo. Think about Muncie. Some of these other places that have had historically large automotive production. Say that again, James. Yeah, the auto factories moved. Yeah, because the automakers wanted to pay less wages. You know, they moved to Mexico first. Some production goes to Canada. Some production now is in China or Vietnam or.
Yeah, now they're starting to open up new jobs in there.
And then at the same time that was happening, and I'm coming back to the automotive industry again because Indiana has lived this. At the same time that oil reserves were becoming more precious, we went through an oil crisis in America in 1979 where gas wasn't even available. You had to be designated a certain day of the week to even go get gas, and you'd had to wait in lines, and gas stations ran out of gas. We were having a conflict with the Middle Eastern countries and OPEC that controlled most of the oil supply, and they cut us off. They raised the prices. They said, if you want this, you got to pay this, and we weren't willing to do it. So gas suddenly dried up. That forced, along with environmental concerns, it forced people to get the people making decisions about car companies forced people to get more fuel efficient. And then whose cars started to become more popular? Honda, Toyota, Nissan, Mazda, all these Japanese cars that were already fuel efficient because they've been doing that over in Japan for a long time. Then they started moving their plants here to America. But Indiana's we got a Subaru Isuzu plant in Lafayette. There's a Honda plant in Greensburg making Civics, I believe. You go down to Evansville, Toyota's making the Tundra trucks. You go down to Columbus and Seymour, Indiana, right along I-65. You go back in those industrial parks, most of those companies are making parts for the Japanese automotive producers. But the whole situation has changed because the American automotive companies didn't respond quickly enough. They had large union contracts that were paying people a lot of money to stand there and do one job all day long. So it's not a simple situation, but the end result of that was a lot of those older factories are just closed up, just left to rust. And so all across the Midwest has always been a big automotive producer, not just Indiana. And think about Michigan, good grief. You know, go ahead.
A lot of my family members work for the
And they mentioned the big automotive companies. You didn't even really have to have any kind of advanced education. You could straight out of high school, go get a factory job, you know, make 30, 35 bucks an hour. Those are tremendous, well-paying jobs. But, you know, the environment changed. The resources became less available. The philosophy changed of the society, for that matter, because people started demanding more fuel efficient cars because gas was so expensive. So the Rust Belt is an important concept to understand what's happened in the Midwest, especially over the last 50 years. Did anybody pick up on the numbers that they mentioned as far as the middle income population? What a middle income family might have to make? Yeah, the 1%ers, those are the top 1% of earners. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of people that obviously protest against that and have over the last several years. What I wrote down was that the middle income range, and when this video was made, yeah.
Sorry, this is off topic, but do you know exactly what time you'll be done around? Because I have to leave.
11:45 is when class is over.
Is it possible if I can leave it
You don't need my permission if you have to leave early. It's okay. Do what you got to do. Okay, we're adults here, right? So you got business to take care of. It's perfectly fine.
The top 1%ers, that implies like financial CEO business owners, like head of Activision, Bobby Kotick, makes like billions yearly, while at the same time laying off people under him. That would be the top 1%.
The 1%ers, yeah. I mean, I'm not familiar with that particular example, but if you think about guys like Bill Gates, you know, started Microsoft, I mean, the uber rich, the people that if you spread the income all across a scale, they would be at the top 1% of all incomes. And the comment that was made here by Stone was about people that have that sort of income level, partly because they're laying off people. And you know, how do a lot of companies grow these days? It's not because their products are great. They go out and gobble up other companies.
The guy that told you about his net worth is $481 million.
$481 million?
Yeah.
Okay.
As of the 31st of March.
Where does he rank in terms of the richest people in America? You know, like with Mark Zuckerberg, for instance, or Jeff Bezos, the guy that started Amazon. I mean, Elon Musk, yeah, he's another one that's.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos is sitting hard at top with a net worth of $177 billion, followed by Elon Musk, Bernard Arnault, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Larry Ellison. He's not high up there, but he's still.
Yeah, it sounds like he's in the top 10. So that's still way more money than I can ever even imagine having access to. You know, the middle income range, you know, we're not talking about, you know, 80,000 was near the top, right? No, it's better to just say something. What you ever remembered is great. Because what I wrote down was 42,000 to 82,000. So if to translate that into an hourly rate, To make $42,000 a year, a typical work year, 40 hours a week, that's 2,080 hours. That's $20.19 an hour. So according to that video at that time, you're not even going to be in the middle class. To get into the middle class, you got to find a job that's going to make you 20 bucks an hour. To make $82,000 a year, just double that. Then you're talking 40 bucks an hour. It's not going to be easy. Those kind of jobs are going to require some advanced education or some other kind of higher education or specialized skills or something. Just one second. So the other thing that Stone mentioned here was a guy named Warren Buffett. He's not in the video, but he is somebody that you guys may have heard of. I don't know if you have or not. He'd be another good person to look up. He's a very rich man. He is also an advisor to presidents and high-ranking people. He runs an investment company. He gives people advice on investing. Very, very influential in economic circles. Who else was on that list? Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett.
Bernard Arnault, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Ellison, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, and Daniel Gilbert
Okay.
are the top 10 overall richest men in the United States.
Is
I found a whole thing that has a section out by men, women, China, India, finance, sports, and world.
who's the guy that's over Virgin Air? Branson.
The CEO of Virgin Airlines.
Yeah, I think it's Virgin Air. He's also he's the guy that been talking about space flight with. He's a contemporary of Elon Musk. Oh, okay. That's not who I was thinking of. But there's a bunch of people in U.S. and otherwise around the world. In fact, since China has opened up and Russia has opened up their economies, some people are doing quite well in both of those countries where 20 years ago, under really strict communist rule, they would not have been at all. So there are questions? Anybody? All right, so far we've been talking about definition for economics, talked about American dream and things that affect that. There's an underlying principle for all of economic theory that I want to talk about next. This should be in the materials here also for the course. If you look at this first sentence here, all economic questions and problems arise from scarcity. That seems like a pretty extreme statement. Would you agree with that or disagree or question it? If you read on, the next sentence clarifies that. Scarcity assumes people do not have the resources to satisfy all of their wants. Scarcity could refer to anything. It could refer to scarce oil reserves on a national or international basis. Individually, it could just refer to how much money I make. You know, I would love to drive a Chevy Corvette. I would love to have that kind of car, but my resources are scarce. I'm not buying an $80,000 sports car. I don't have those kind of resources. So if I were to do everything I could to satisfy that desire, what am I going to have to give up? I don't know, but it's probably a lot. And that's the flips. Yeah, probably. Good credit score. Yeah, that might go in the tank. Maybe I, might have to do something illegal even, and that's, I don't want to do that. I like my life too much. But the flip side of that example is what's referred to as opportunity cost. And that's at the end of that first paragraph. What is it? What's the cost of something that we're giving up to get something that we want? So scarcity and opportunity costs are two other really good concepts in economics that you really should become familiar with. Scarcity and opportunity cost. Our resources are not unlimited. Our desires, though, are pretty much unlimited. We want what we want. We want it right away. We don't want to wait. That's said to be a common problem with society nowadays. We want instant gratification. We want it now. Well, we can't afford everything that we want. Our resources are scarce. I mean, even think about just having $5 in your pocket. You go over here to the Speedway. What can you buy for $5? Well, whatever you buy is not going to be a whole lot to begin with, but you're going to have to make some choices of how are you going to use those resources? What are you going to buy, and what does that mean in terms of what you have to give up? So this simplistic example here shows gum at 50 cents a pack and soda or pop for $1 a can. How many sodas can you buy instead of 2 packs of gum? Only one. Because 2 packs of gum are equal to the cost of 1 soda. So your opportunity cost when you buy that soda is 2 packs of gum, because that's what you're having to give up. If all you have is $1 to spend, you can either buy 2 packs of gum or 1 soda. So whichever you choose, you're giving up something else. So scarcity and opportunity costs, big concepts. You guys familiar with either of those terms already? All right, the other thing I'm going to look at is another one of these economic concepts that you may not have ever consciously thought of, but it's something that everybody has to deal with pretty much every day. And it's related to scarcity. This whole idea of what we want and what we need. And a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding about these concepts sometimes gets people into a lot of economic trouble. So let's say I need a new pair of shoes. Do I have to go buy $230 LeBron Nikes? Nah. I can go to Walmart and buy some shoes for some tennis shoes for 20 bucks. But the emphasis of consumption in our society, and we get influenced by marketing, and we got to have that brand, you know, or that celebrity endorsements. We want to have that too. Now it's a want. It's not just a need anymore. We need shoes, but what do we want? What kind of shoes do we want?
It's like, I've had this argument with my significant other where you can save more money if you get like great value, but you're always supporting like name brand because it tastes better, but it also costs more.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, it's food. It is something you need, but like the expense that you spend on it is when it becomes something that you need.
Yep. And every choice we make, you can fall into that same trap, if you will. You know, are you going to go? I mean, because that's what the marketing and advertising people, that's their job. Their job is to get you to spend more. Their job is to convince you that you need their product compared to somebody else's. Right? I mean, we don't have unlimited amount of money. So if it's a choice between Burger King and White Castle's cheaper. I like White Castle.
I've never had one.
Oh,
I had a friend of mine years ago, but she posted on Facebook. It was like the price of a meal from a restaurant, and then like that same price, but all in groceries. They were like double the amount of groceries than there was food from the meal, and it's like, why would you go get something that only feeds you once and you get something that feeds you like 2 days?
and that's a perfect example, Stone. Restaurants versus, you know, home cooking. There's a concept called the step down method that we'll talk about later this term. So if I stick with this example of food, you know, the cheapest is going to be to prepare your own. Buy the groceries, prepare your own. If you want to look at restaurants, you got a ton of different varieties, a ton of different options, right? Okay, good job, Ruth. She said she ate White Castle once in 17 years. Good for her. But even within restaurants, you got a lot of choices. The lower end stuff, you know, White Castle, In-N-Out, you know, a little more expensive is Arby's, you know, all the way up to Ruth's Chris or Harry and Izzy's, you know, some of these $100 steak places, or St. Elmo's downtown Indy.
Yeah, we jokingly said that we're gonna go to Ruth Chris's before, and then we Darius looked at the menu and we decided we're never going there.
You got to be prepared to spend some money if you're going to go to one of those kind of steakhouses.
Yeah.
Now you could go to a Ponderosa or was it the Golden Corral? They got steaks, they got that kind of stuff, but you're not going to pay $100. So what do you want versus what do you need? And we're constantly making those kind of choices. And so if you look at these definitions in here, wants are nice to have, but not essential. Needs are the essentials, the basics of life. What are the things that we all need to survive? I mean, and they are pretty basic. Food, housing, clothing.
You just don't need like the best end version of that.
Right. And again, the marketing and the advertising world, that's their job, is to convince us that we need something that's really only a want. And that's just the way, you know, in a capitalist society, that's just the way it works, you know, because those companies are out to make more money. So they hire Jake from State Farm, you know, and Aaron Rodgers to go on there and advertise for State Farm Insurance. It's going to make you think, oh, I like Aaron Rodgers. I like the Green Bay Packers. I like NFL football. If he's got it, I might as well get it too. But think about all the, and insurance is a great industry for that kind of comparison. Look at Liberty Mutual. Who's advertising What do they do on Liberty Mutual commercials? It's the yellow car. It's the emu. It's the Liberty Blibberty guy that jumps into the water. It's the cell phone guy that jumps into the bowl of rice, you know? Yeah, exactly. And who else is out there? You got Geico, you got Progressive. If you watch any, even on the internet nowadays, you got commercials for all these companies. So they're all basically selling the same kind of products. So their job is to convince us that we need them more so than somebody else.
The guy who was basically a stand-in for disaster.
Oh yeah, Mr. Mayhem. Yeah, that's another one. Farmers insurance is another great. And I got some ads to show when we had some more time on that kind of stuff. You know, you thought you were paying for this, but you actually are paying for that. And you know, we've seen a thing or two, and you know, the concrete that gets dumped on the guy's convertible car and all that sort of stuff. They're memorable because that's their task, to stand out amongst all the competition, so that when it comes time for you to go get some insurance, you're going to think of them first. And you know, insurance is one of those things that you know, if you're going to drive, you have to have insurance. Everybody's required to have medical insurance. There's a lot of different ways that insurance comes into play, and a lot of competition. And what I'm going to finish with here is kind of circling back to this idea of scarcity. You know, in the same way that the society has to make choices about how to use its limited resources, we have to do the same thing because our resources are limited, right? Our resources are not infinite. Now, maybe if we were in the 1%ers, we wouldn't have to worry about it. But if we were, we wouldn't all be sitting here talking about this today. I guarantee that. So that's pretty much it for today, guys. There's that American Dream assignment should populate. It should already be up for you guys to do. Couple of things on one side of that you might want to do some quick research on the internet about. There's a question about who's got the most followers on Twitter. That's why I mentioned Warren Buffett. He's in that list. I want to be sure you guys knew who, at least had heard that name and knew who Warren Buffett was. You know, and think about all the people that are called influencers now, the YouTubers and people like that are out there trying to influence you to buy their product. Heck, I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and I get stuff all the time. Hey, you want to help us promote this product? You know, all you got to do is buy this thing and then go on and do some reviews for us and show yourself, post some pictures wearing this watch or whatever. You can be an influencer too. Well, not convinced it's that easy, but. So anybody have any questions? This is kind of the way things will go. You guys that are here in the classroom have some really good feedback today, and I appreciate the comments that people put in the chat. So keep doing that. Again, tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday, I should be available if you have questions, need extra help. I'm also available fourth period on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you don't have to wait till tomorrow if something comes up. I may not be able to get back to you immediately, but I will get back to you if you text me or email, but text be quicker for sure.
Okay, Jay. We have a make homework in any way.
It'll all
We have
be
to do
Google Classroom.
Google Classroom. Okay,
Yep.
good.
Okay,
Bye.
I'm gonna stop the recording, and we'll see everybody on Thursday.
Bye. See you Thursday.
Thanks for being here.